posted a big story this week about the border wall and the president being so obsessed with the wall, the man Mexico was going to pay for and Congress wouldn't pay for, that he's been telling subordinates to just break the law in order to get it done. That even includes just basically just stealing land from ranchers. He's quoted in the article saying, "Take the land." Also suggesting he would pardon anyone who followed his directions to break the law, which the White House was quick to say was a joke. Trump is joking when he makes such statements about pardons. But if you want to know how popular this obsessive, lawless, wall-building agenda is along the actual southern border, where it's supposed to be built, here's one data point. The only Republican to represent a district along the southwest border who squeaked out a narrow victory in 2018 has decided to retire. Joining me now is that Republican, Congressman Will Hurd, Republican from Texas.
Just for the record, those two things don't have to be connected, right?
Well, yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm not going to say that's why you're leaving.
Right,
you can tell me later whether that's the case. But when I read that quote, "Take the land," I thought, that doesn't seem like it would play really well in the Texas border area you represent. Am I wrong about that?
Well, there's a little thing that we care about in the great state of Texas, and that's called private property rights. And there's going to be a couple of people. There's going to be a few ranchers that have an opinion on this topic. And look, I represent 820 miles of the border. I represent 29 counties, 2 time zones. It takes 10.5 hours for me to drive from one part of my district to the other at 80 miles an hour, which is actually the speed limit in most of the district. I found out recently it's not the speed limit in all of the districts. And I spent almost a decade, 9.5 years as an undercover officer in the CIA. I was the dude in the back alleys at 4 o'clock in the morning collecting intelligence on threats to our homeland, stopping terrorists, preventing Russians from stealing our secrets, putting nuclear weapon proliferators out of business. So I know a few things about stopping bad guys, right? And building a wall from sea to shining sea is the most expensive and least effective way to do border security.
I mean, it's very clear the wall, and there's even reporting on this, right, that the wall was created almost as a mnemonic device so the president would remember to talk about the border and immigration, and then he turned it into this real obsession. Like, have you tried to communicate the basic factual case about the lack of need for an 800-mile wall to the White House?
I have. When John Kelly was the head of DHS and then ultimately chief of staff, we've had a number of conversations. And there are some parts of the border where a physical barrier actually makes sense. But there's also a lot of parts of the border where Border Patrol's response time to a threat is measured in hours to days. So if you're trying to respond to a threat and it takes you hours or days, that wall is not going to be a physical barrier. Now, there's a problem. You have, $35 billion with a B dollars worth of drugs coming into our country illegally. We know the humanitarian crisis that's going along the border. We should be able to defend our borders, and we should know what's going back and forth across our border. And the way we do that is technology. The way we do that is additional manpower.
So, but here, let me just sort of on those 2 points, right? So drugs and people coming. We know that most drugs come through ports of entry, right? So it's not, people are not driving to some part of the desert and bringing, the cartels are sophisticated enough, they have enough people they can bribe and get over on to actually drive them through the ports of entry. So here's what I would say. A lot of the drugs are indeed coming through our ports of entry, and we should be plussing up the technology that we're using there because we can facilitate the movement of goods and services at the same time and stop bad guys and prevent contraband from coming in. But we also don't know what the denominator is in the amount of drugs that are coming in because we have no clue what's happening in other parts of these areas. You can see, and you made a point about the narco-traficantes, the drug cartels. They're making $35 billion in the United States. That means they're larger than McDonald's and Starbucks. And so they have the technology. You're seeing them fly things in with drones. You're seeing them bring it in on sea. Here's another problem. Coast Guard. Coast Guard is only able to action 25% of the known intelligence on drugs coming in through our coast. So that means 75% where they know something is not happening. So let's spend the money on those kind of things that are going to stop this problem from coming in. But even the logic of more enforcement, right? More manpower. We have seen that over time. I mean, it's gone up every year. And I've talked to people a lot of times, we used to have migration in this country that was seasonal, that people moved back and forth. And one of the things that happened is when you up border enforcement, you don't just keep people out, you keep people in. Right? We have seen, actually, there's a direct correlation. The more you enforce that border, the harder you make it to get across that border, the more that people who used to come for 6 months and then go back, come for a year and go back, they stop doing that. And my question to you is, the president clearly sees the border in this almost neurotic way of like a place where like germs get in. And so he's like, well, when I breathe, I might get germs, so I'm going to stop breathing.
Yeah.
But it's like the border is a good thing. The things that come in through the border aren't just bad things, right?
Look, we should be defending our border, but also we should be facilitating legal immigration, right?
Expanding it? Do you think we should expand it?
The United States of America has benefited from the brain drain of every other country for the last couple of decades. Let's continue that. So, this is a great crowd, by the way.
Yeah, you know. You got them applauding private property in the CIA in the first minutes. Pretty good politician. Why are you retiring?
I'm retiring because I'm looking to help my country in a different way.
I know that's what you say, but why are you really retiring?
Because I want to help. No, I want to.